Hey everybody, welcome to the Think and Grow Society webinar. Friday has come so quickly. I don't know where these weeks go, but I do know that I need to find a way to make them more productive between Fridays. We've got so much great stuff going on around here, it's hard to keep track of all the goodness that's happening. We just had today, for example, a young gentleman who has been a friend of the Village Connector program for about a year now, just returned from somewhat of a sabbatical from us and is ready to basically get going with our TV production studio. He's going to be an incredible asset to us in terms of helping us to produce the TV shows that we have slated for launch on Village Connector TV later on in the summer. Actually, I'm sorry, in the fall, early fall. So we're very happy to have him back in the fold. He had some things that he needed to take care of from a business perspective and has decided to move completely in the direction of producing TV with us and for his own purposes as well. So we're very happy to have him back. This is a happy day at Village Connector Media, so we're excited for that. But I want to thank you for joining us on Friday night once again. And we're really coming down the home stretch here because we are now on lesson 15 of 16 in the Law of Success in 16 lessons, and tonight's lesson is on tolerance. But after this, we only have two more lessons. We have, well, actually three technically, but we have the lesson on the Golden Rule, which will finish up everything on Law of Success in 16 lessons, and then we have the Law of the Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, and the Master Key System by Charles Haanel. And I haven't decided yet, but we may combine those two lessons into one, the Science of Getting Rich and the Master Key System, mostly because they cover the same subject just from the perspective of two separate authors. So I'll be making a decision about whether to combine those or not before we have our next session next week on the Golden Rule. But regardless of whether we combine them, it's going to be a very, very feature-rich or information-rich session. So we may actually take that one for an hour instead of 30 minutes. With that in mind, it's time for us to get started with tolerance. And tolerance, actually, it was interesting that Dr. Hill started this lesson off by highlighting intolerance. And I want to take a moment just to have you hear directly what he had to say with respect to intolerance. And especially, you might want to write these two phrases down, or write these two thoughts down. Dr. Hill, in the very first page of the chapter, had this to say about intolerance. Intolerance is a form of ignorance, which must be mastered before any form of enduring success may be attained. Intolerance is a form of ignorance, which must be mastered before any form of enduring success may be attained. That's something I would carry with me if I were you in your journal. The second statement that he made about intolerance is that intolerance is the chief disintegrating force in the organized religions of the world, where it plays havoc with the greatest power for good there is on this earth, by breaking up that power into small sects and denominations which spend as much effort opposing each other as they do in destroying the evils of the world. Now, I actually feel more strongly aligned with that second statement, and it's not just the religions of the world, but I believe that one of the biggest challenges we face in humanity is the fact that we allow ourselves to be divided into small groups that don't play well together, and that diffuses the power that we have together. And I truly believe that humanity's best opportunity to evolve comes in our putting aside petty differences and being able to work together with each other in a united way. And unfortunately, our culture and the culture of most of the nations around the world is such that people become divided. And they become divided mostly because of people who wish to have power over them, making sure that people won't play nicely together. Because if we could play nicely together, we wouldn't need a lot of the people that we elect into power, into positions of power. So when you think about intolerance being fostered by the division that exists amongst us, think about how many different ways in society we allow ourselves to be divided on issues which pit us against each other. We have gender differences. We have religious differences. We have racial differences, ethnic differences. We have sexual orientation differences. We have differences just related to things about philosophical belief. We have economic differences. But here's the point. There are always going to be things that we differ on. And we allow those things, unfortunately, too many times to stifle a dialogue, a conversation, an engagement process that could allow us to develop enough trust and respect for each other to actually accomplish things. We all know that there are certain people that, because of their beliefs, won't play nicely with other people, even when their interests could be aligned. We see that politically, we see it socially and otherwise. But the point is that the thing that makes intolerance the height of ignorance is the fact that we recognize that we're allowing ourselves to be divided, and we seem to be comfortable with that. Well, Village Connector Media, and Abundant Society in particular, was created to hopefully get people to come together at least around the things that we have in common, and to stop allowing ourselves to be divided about things that simply don't matter. The truth is that we always, as human beings, will have more in common with each other than we ever will things that differentiate us in a way that creates a barrier to our working together. So I'd like to think that the antidote to intolerance, ignorance, and these divisions that we allow is a lesson that we started this off with. We started these lessons off with the first lesson, the mastermind principle. Remember what the mastermind principle was about. The mastermind principle was about people coming together in perfect harmony for a definite purpose. Now, notice that definition of mastermind, people coming together in perfect harmony for a definite purpose, it didn't say that they all believed the same things. It didn't say that they all agreed on everything. It did say that they came together in perfect harmony for a definite purpose. It didn't mean that they had to agree with each other on every purpose. It simply meant that they found something they could agree on, and they came together around that thing. And I believe that the reason that that's important for us to keep in mind is that we have the ability to work effectively with each other as long as we don't have the need to validate the beliefs that we hold by trying to convince other people to see everything that we believe our way. That's the one thing that divides us more than anything else, is the belief that we have to convince somebody else to see everything from our perspective and to embrace it in that fashion. And I believe that one of the reasons we do that is because many times our own belief about something, whatever it might be, whether it's religious, whether it's social, whether it's political or otherwise, is actually validated by how many other people believe it or how many other people we can convince to see it that way. And usually that for us is a self-esteem issue. Because if your beliefs are dependent on what somebody else believes, whether someone else believes you're right or wrong, if you have a need to be right all the time, then what's really happening inside of you is that you don't truly have faith. Because if you truly believed in what you stood for, you wouldn't find your belief being challenged because everyone didn't agree with you. And so part of faith, part of tolerance is being comfortable in your own skin with your own beliefs, where what you believe isn't, the strength of what you believe isn't dictated by what other people believe. What if everyone else was wrong and the only reason you chose to believe something was because they believed it? Or what if everyone else was right and you chose not to change your beliefs just because you're being entrenched in them? My point to you is this: it takes a great degree of maturity to be able to objectively consider other people's opinions. And being tolerant doesn't mean that you agree with them. It simply means that you're able to entertain their perspective without putting up and erecting a barrier to it. Because if you can't hear other people's perspective without threatening your own beliefs, you really have to question why that is. And more times than not, it's because you don't believe those things as strongly as you should. And if you don't believe them as strongly as you should, then you should be asking yourself, why? Why do I believe this in the first place? If your belief isn't strong, maybe it's because of simple emotional conditioning around that thing, as opposed to because it's truly the right thing to believe. But most of us don't like to be challenged in our beliefs. We like to be comfortable in feeling validated that what we believe is the right thing, whatever that might be. And we very rarely will entertain the notion that maybe we're wrong. Maybe our way of life, maybe our system, maybe our beliefs are not foolproof. We should at least, as intelligent beings, be open to that possibility. Now, that's where some of these other lessons start to come into play. Because if you are open to the possibility that maybe you don't have the last word or the definitive information on everything in life, maybe that will keep you exploring and journeying towards something that brings you closer to truth. Maybe it will cause you to engage in accurate thought, where you take the time to consciously consider other perspectives without allowing that to do violence to your own beliefs, but just being aware of what other possibilities there may be out here for you in terms of something of consequence that you believe. You know, Aristotle had one of the best quotes that I've ever heard, and I want to share that with you, and I would record this in your journal. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And I think that really is the essence of what we're talking about here. The fact that you can respectfully entertain someone else's thought or someone else's idea, regardless of what you believe, that you can objectively and with an open mind entertain someone else's perspective, their thought, their belief, without necessarily accepting it, actually is the evidence of a mature mind. And the reason that that's important is that sometimes people aren't trying to convince you to see it their way. They just want you to understand what they believe and why they believe it. And once you understand where they're coming from, you can agree gracefully to disagree, but still find enough common ground where there's still something that you can work on together. Most of us don't have enough respect for each other to entertain the other perspective without accepting it, but to entertain it in a way that shows respect for the other person's beliefs. So we never get to the point where we can say, okay, I understand where you're coming from, and I believe you understand where I'm coming from. Where can we find the opportunity to work together regardless of what our individual beliefs may be? That's something that almost never happens in the political process, because political power always ends up being about trying to get enough people to believe it your way to force it down the throats of the people who don't believe it. The truth is that if our elected officials, if our leaders, our community leaders and otherwise, truly wanted to do the work of the community, the work of humanity, they would learn how to set aside partisan differences and seek solutions that maybe they wouldn't even entertain because it's not part of their ideology, it's not part of their political agenda, if you will. They're more interested in forcing something on other people because of what they believe than finding a way to work together for a solution that we can all embrace enthusiastically. And we see that every day in every country on this planet. There simply isn't anyone on the planet that is exempt from this behavior, because culturally we have been trying to dominate and have power over each other since the beginning of mankind. So Unfortunately, to this point in time, we haven't come up with a remedy for this. But actually, there's a remedy. We haven't embraced the remedy. The truth is that there is a remedy for it. And the remedy is to go back to lesson number 1 and to understand the power of the mastermind. People coming together in perfect harmony and around a definite purpose. And that doesn't require us to agree on everything. If we can just find one thing we can agree on and work together on that, that allows us to develop enough trust and respect for and with each other that maybe we can find something else that we can work together on. And if we string enough of those common ground things to work together on, maybe some of the differences that we have didn't matter in the first place. The truth is that we never get to string those common ground things together because we allow our petty differences to keep us from ever coming together. That is what has to change if humanity is going to evolve. And that is the mission of Abundant Society and Village Connector Media. All that we do is designed to give us the opportunity to put aside partisanship. That's why we don't cover politics, we don't cover crime, we don't cover controversy. We're looking to find something we have in common that we can have a dialogue about and enjoy each other's company around that dialogue. And if we do that consistently enough, when we do start to deal with more thorny issues, we at least have enough respect for each other that maybe we can have that discussion without it becoming dramatic, without it becoming confrontational, without it becoming a hysterical debate. You see, the truth is debate is code for division. If we really wanted to come up with solutions, we wouldn't debate things. We would sit down and engage in creative thought together. That's really what changes outcomes. But we would rather engage in debate, trying to convince each other to see it a specific way, than to simply come out and say, let's not do it your way or my way, let's do it the best way. What could the best way be? Are there any things that we have not considered that might provide us a better outcome than either of us has come up with individually? That's what it means to engage in creative thought. It has nothing to do with partisanship. It has nothing to do with how many people will vote for this or that. It has everything to do with, can we put our minds together in a way that allows us to come up with a solution that everyone can be excited about? And if we start with things we have in common, those solutions can be found and will be found when we make the conscious choice to be on the search for those things, to be on the search for truth rather than just our belief. So I hope that this lesson on tolerance reveals to you where you may have room for growth. Think back on today, this past week, this past year, even your entire life, and think about where you may be portraying or maybe exhibiting behaviors that are consistent with being intolerant. We see it all day on Facebook as people are posting their political agendas, and regardless of what side of the coin you choose to be on, people are always posting things that give evidence of the fact that they are not tolerant. They can't entertain someone else's perspective objectively. They can't even have a discussion about it because of their own hardcore beliefs. When someone can't entertain someone else's thought, what that really means is that they're not teachable. They desire change in their minds, but they're not open to change. They desire their way, and they desire to have that way imposed on others, rather than being able to sit down at a table and say, let's do something different today. Let's see if we can come up with a solution to this challenge that has not been proposed by anybody in the past. Let's put all the cards on the table and see, is there something out here that neither of us has considered individually that might bring us together? That takes a great deal of confidence, a great deal of maturity, but more important than anything else, it takes a great deal of humility. And unfortunately, humility is something that's very lacking in the people we tend to send to represent us in political office. It's also something that's very lacking in us individually. There is a desire, a burning desire sometimes, to be right. And I know that this, I know I'm probably preaching the choir with the people that are on this line tonight, but I will tell you this, that we will get right when we give up our desire to always be right. And what I mean by that is, if we can open ourselves up to the fact that maybe somebody's got some input that might make a difference in our thought process or in the way that we choose to do things, that's how you become teachable, by being willing to entertain thoughts that other people have that may differ with your own beliefs, but then you evaluate objectively and consistently through deliberate and accurate thought whether there is merit to somebody else's thought. You see, sometimes we won't even entertain the thought for fear of what it may do to our own belief system. I'm telling you right now that if you can't entertain thoughts that are outside of your belief system, at least for the purpose of understanding them, then you're not teachable, you're not open to change, and you probably are stifling your own ability to grow. And that's probably the saddest part of the whole process, is that you as an individual are stifling your ability to grow by not being able to maturely entertain a thought that challenges your own belief system. Most of us, if we look back on our belief system, don't even know why we believe what we believe. We believe what we believe because that's what we were taught. We were conditioned by parents and school systems and governments to think a certain way. And if we were to look back and see whether we really believe in the principles that are part of our political platforms, we'd probably find that half the things that the political parties or half the things that we learn aren't even things we care about, let alone believe. But we entertain them because we become comfortable. We embrace them because we become comfortable with them, not because they're necessarily the best way for us to proceed in life. So I'm going to ask you, as part of the exercise today, to go back and think about how many things you believe that cause you to have conflict with others. And then I want you to think about how important are those things really. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what should be important to you. You make that decision yourself. But I guarantee you, if you made a list of, you just start with the typical political platform of what the party that you choose to associate yourself with believes. If you were to write down all the things that they stand for, how many of those things are really important to you? Or how many do you just get yourself in line in because you happen to belong to that political party or the other political party, or no political party but a particular school of thought? The truth is, most of us could live without at least half of what is part of our basic upbringing when it comes to philosophy. We believe it because our parents taught it. We believe it because we learned it in school systems. We believe it because it's part of the so-called party that we belong to. But we don't really find ourselves affected by it, other than the fact that it's part of the platform. That's not a real strong reason to embrace any kind of thought. In fact, that doesn't require any thought at all. That's really just choosing your flavor of Kool-Aid and deciding that it's easier to drink it than to think about the fact that there may be something better out there than just Kool-Aid. So I'm asking you to explore the possibility tonight that maybe there's something better out there for you and for humanity than just Kool-Aid. So that's my spin on it. And I know that I have a tendency to get on a soapbox when we get on this topic, but tolerance is something that I believe everyone should have in their toolkit if they truly expect to participate in the evolution of humanity. We all are needed at the table when it comes to helping in the process of seeing humanity evolve. We can't afford for people to spill Kool-Aid all over the place when we have the work to get done that's necessary to evolve humanity. So I don't know if there are any comments or anybody that's got anything they want to add in here. Let me see who's online today. Oh, we got a full house here. Good deal. I see quite a few. See some new faces. Not new to me, but new to the event. And this might be one of our largest online groups for tonight. So welcome to everyone. I won't single everybody out. just know that I see that you're here, and I appreciate you being here. And I hope that some of what we've shared, I see what happened. I didn't have the chat box enabled. That's why people couldn't. Having a conversation. Okay, so Sylvia Henderson says, having a conversation about beliefs, especially where we differ passionately, is one of the most difficult conversations to have. We get lost in our passion and have to be mindful of our relationships. Great topic, great reminder. Thank you for that, Sylvia. Sylvia and I have been friends for many years now, and I have great respect for her willingness to be open to other ideas. We don't always agree on everything, but we do love and adore each other as human beings, and we do find very, very consciously that we have differences that are no difference whatsoever when we start focusing on what really matters. And so I love that about Sylvia and all of my friends. I mean, that's who congregates here at Village Connector. That's who joins Abundant Society, people who realize that nothing is more important than the things we have in common, especially not things that differentiate us. So thank you for Sylvia being part of this community, part of what we do here. And I'm seeing, for some reason or another, I can't scroll down and see all the messages, but it looks like there's quite a few in here. Let me see if there's oh, there we go. I got it going. Janine, wonderful, very applicable to many contentious societal issues. Yes, and Janine, you're going to face a lot of those with your project because of how divided people can become over something as simple as the subject matter that you're pursuing in your nonprofit organization. And that's one of the reasons that I really believe in what you're doing, and I'm excited to be working with you to see that come to fruition. Janine also says, just saw the WIDA program tonight on major split between progressives and conservatives in Wisconsin. Yeah, there's always going to be a major split because they allow it to be a major split. The truth is that most of us want the same things. We just think that we have the definitive way to go about getting them. And that's where it really is unfortunate. So the bottom line in all of this is that if we were truly seeking the best solutions, then a lot of these things would not become issues. So with all that in mind, I'm going to get down off the soapbox and bid you a wonderful weekend. Now remember, next week will be the last lesson in the Law of Success in 16 lessons. It's the Golden Rule. And it's a very appropriate one to follow tolerance. Because now we talk about a tool that helps us to become more tolerant and helps us to unify humanity. And the Golden Rule just does that in a very, very wonderful way. So if you haven't read that lesson, go ahead to the next lesson. If you haven't already downloaded and read The Science of Getting Rich and Charles Haanel's The Master Key System, please do that as well, because it's very likely that we're going to combine the discussion of those two books into the lesson following next Friday. I don't want you to get caught off guard. The Science of Getting Rich is only about 65 pages long. And even though the Master Key System is about 225 pages or so, it's very, very quick reading. It's not labor intensive. So I think you could knock both of those out in certainly in a week. I mean, you could knock the Science of Getting Rich out in one evening. And in fact, let me point to something out. Being able to get through it on the first read is one thing, but there is way too much wisdom in there for you to get it on the first read. But unfortunately, we've got to move forward and cover these topics. So I want to warn you right up front, there's no way that we're going to cover all that there is to know about the law of attraction just by having read The Science of Getting Rich one time and the Master Key System one time. I'd like to simply suggest to you that when I cover that with you, I'm going to be highlighting why you should go back and read it over and over and over again and really understand and master the principles in it, because it's a lifetime endeavor. But the good news is that you will get better at it to the point where it's worth it for you to continue the study, because the better you get, the more effective it becomes as a tool in your life. And you could literally make your entire life about mastering an understanding of those principles. So what is Jack saying here for me? An important point is that merely listening to others' ideas and thoughts is not agreeing with the idea or thought. It's just getting another data point, which may help to understand better how the other person views a situation. The bias is when we assume why they differ. Exactly. And that's why understanding comes from tolerance. To understand doesn't necessarily mean to embrace an idea. But if you can at least understand someone's perspective, that opens your mind to ways that you can find common ground. Well, I understand that this is what you believe, and now that I understand that, I see that there is an opportunity for us to work together without necessarily trying to sell each other on our belief. You'd be surprised how many times two people, two factions, want the same thing, but because they spend most of their time trying to convince the other to see it their way, they miss the opportunity to work together to make it happen unless everyone accepts the other person's perspective. In other words, there are people out here, conservatives and liberals, that actually would want the same thing, but they spend all their time trying to convince each other to want it for the same reasons, rather than just to want it bad enough to work together to make it happen. We see that with energy issues. There are some people who want to see us be energy independent for national security reasons, and there are some people that want us to pursue alternative energy sources because it helps the environment. Now, both want the same thing for different reasons, and both could have the same thing if they would not try to force their reason on the other person. Who cares whether you want it for national security reasons or because it saves the environment, as long as the solution satisfies both people? Yet there are people that literally will not talk to each other in a dialogue this way that we're having here tonight unless they can assure that they can force it down your throat for the reasons that are important to them. That, in my opinion, is the height of ignorance. It's the height of immaturity. It is the height of just everything that is keeping us from achieving the ultimate in humanity, which is the ability to work together and make things happen just by coming together in harmony. We all know, how many times have we heard the saying, united we stand, divided we fall. Many hands make light work. If everyone does a little, no one has to do a lot. These are all symbolic of the fact that everything worth doing means coming together in the company of others who are united in seeing it done. Let's stop passing Kool-Aid back and forth and start embracing each other with ideas and a willingness to work together. I think we can start that here at Abundant Society. I think we can start that here at Village Connector Media. That is what our communication system was created to facilitate, is a dialogue, a conversation with each other. Let's talk to each other, not at each other. So that's going to wrap things up for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I will look forward to seeing you next week. Have a fabulous weekend. I can promise you I plan on doing that for myself. So we'll see you guys next week. Let me know if you need anything. Have a great weekend.